Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee. I am Councillor Wiggin, the appointed chair. The other subcommittee members are Councillor Warren and Councillor Fulbourn. Before we start the meeting, please can I remind everyone that this is a meeting held in public and that the audio recording may be made available on the website in due course. Please therefore speak clearly into your microphones. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. We are here to hold a hearing for an application for a new premises licence in relation to Nene Valley Rock Festival, Horse Meadow and Lynch Farm, Nene Park, Peterborough, made by directors of Nene Valley Rock Festival. There are no apologies for absence to record. Do members have any declarations of interest to record? No. Has the applicant and everyone who is making representations today received a copy of the report? Yep, everyone is indicating that they have. I shall now introduce the parties to this hearing. Darren Dolby is the Regulatory Officer for Peterborough City Council. Colin Miles is the Legal Officer. Dan Calley is the Committee Clerk. The applicant, Andrew Little, Trevor Cottrell and Tony Castle are present, accompanied by witnesses from the Nene Park Trust, Stephanie Peachy and Pete Edwards. Councillor Day and other persons, Dawn Sadler, Bob and Susan Bailey, Neil Fife, Paul Rogerson, Steve Swan and Sue Cox are present and have made representation against the application and have indicated they wish to address the hearing. The procedure to be adopted today is as follows. This is a formal hearing. Council rules and procedures will apply. Parties are not required to give evidence under oath, but are reminded that the deliberate telling of untrue statements is a criminal offence under Section 158 of the Licensing Act 2003. Parties will provide evidence seated. Any question, comment or statement must be addressed through myself as chair. There will be no direct cross-examination by any person of any other person. I have the right to intervene and interrupt any person if that person is providing evidence that is not relevant to the proceedings or in relation to the licensing objectives under which representations have been made. For this application, this is public safety, the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of children from harm, the prevention of public nuisance. The order in which evidence is to be given to this subcommittee is as follows. The licensing officer will present the application and report. The applicant or their representative will present their case. Responsible authorities or other representatives will present their submissions. The subcommittee members and I may ask questions at any time during the procedure of any person in order to clarify a matter. Once all submissions have been heard and no further questions are necessary, the subcommittee will withdraw to consider all the evidence before determining the application. The subcommittee will provide a final determination today. In the event that a full determination cannot be provided today, this will be formally written and sent by post to all interested parties forthwith. I will now ask the licensing officer to present the application.
Good afternoon. Members of the committee have before them an application for a new premises licence which has been submitted by Nene Valley Rock Festival Limited relating to a premises situated in Horse Meadow in Nene Park in Peterborough. Relevant representations against the application have been received by a total of 70 other persons who are against the granting of the licence application. We have received no representations from any of the responsible authorities, which include Cambridgeshire Constabulary and Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. A representation from the Council's pollution control team was withdrawn as a result of mediation with the applicant. Taking into account that all parties have had the opportunity to read the report, it is not my intention to go through the report in fine detail, but to draw attention to the significant areas of the application. During the application process, the Council's pollution control team did engage with the applicant in relation to concerns over possible noise disturbance to local residents. As a result of this engagement, a number of additional conditions were agreed to be placed on the application by the applicant. These additional conditions have been placed in section 7.2 of the committee report. Paragraph 3 deals with the authorisations and hours applied for. In essence, the application is for the on-sales of alcohol and regulated entertainment at the premises, Monday to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Chair, unless I can be of any further assistance, I will ask that you commence the hearing in order that members can consider the representations that have been received and take such steps that are necessary and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objectives.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I was going to ask, did the subcommittee have any questions for the licensing officer? Councillor Forward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification, really. I'm trying to understand the application is for the 365 days. The event is over 4 days. It reads, it's a bit ambiguous. It reads like there's 4 days through the year, or can they run events every day of the year? And is there a criteria where they don't have to come here to get permission to run an event? Is there a figure on that? 250 people or whatever? And what's the upper limit on that?
So the answer to the first query, with regards to the 4 days, it is 4 concert days per year. So if you equate it to on the embankment, we've had in the past JLS and all that. That would be counted as 1 concert day. So the applicant, if the application is granted, would be permitted to have 4 concert days throughout the year, 365 as you indicated. They could be made up of 2 consecutive days, 3 consecutive days, and a separate day, or they could be at this year's planned event is for 4 days. It's up to 4 days in total. With regards to your second query, they would need to notify the Peterborough City Council and this Safety Advisory Group of any upcoming events. Because there's more than 500 people going in, and it is advisory, it is an advice, and suggested that they do contact us if they believe that it's going to be more than 500 people at one time at the event, so that we would get a notification via the Safety Advisory Group that the event was going ahead, and that would be pushed out to all of the responsible authorities.
Just come back on that. So they could run events for less than 500 people and have no obligation to contact PCC. So they can run as many events as they like.
They can have as many events as they like that contain the regulated entertainment. Sorry, but they couldn't have what is deemed as a concert day, or a big concert day. But they could have craft festivals with a bar there, if they so wish, and if the I guess in this occasion, if the landlord or the leaseholders were applicable to it.
Thank you. Any further questions for the licensing officer? No. Thank you. In that case, could I invite the applicants from the Nene Valley Rock Festival to present their case?
Mr. Chair, if I could start, I just wanted to first of all apologise for not being present in person. You may or may not be aware I'm in New Zealand, currently in New Zealand, on a family matter. As was introduced, there are 3 directors of Nene Valley, or NVRF Limited, which is the company that has been set up to run, hopefully run Nene Valley Rock Festival. All 3 directors are equally competent to be able to speak here, and we just felt that for the purposes of clarity and just to avoid any particular glitches with the IT system, hopefully that won't be the case. So that although I am the named individual on the license application, it would probably be better for Tony Castle, who is present in front of you, to actually introduce our application. So with your permission, I'd like to hand over to him.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, hand over to Tony.
the last one I pressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've put together some notes here to try and go through our points. Please, I'm not overly familiar with these kind of proceedings, so if I do deviate away from where I'm supposed to be, as you've already said, I won't mind if you point out to me. I'd like to start with just a little bit of background about who we are and why we're here and why we want to put this on. We are all people who have worked at music festivals for many years and attended music festivals for many years. We put this festival together because we looked at the demographic of the people that are likely to be attending. And if you look at myself and Trevor, that'll give you a good idea of what we're talking about. And designed our festival around the type of festival that we believed that people of our age group would wish to attend. The festival, there are a few points that have come up, especially in the local press, that I'd like to stress are totally wrong, and if I can just go through some of these in my summaries. Our festival would be playing progressive blues and classic rock, which by nature of itself is a type of music that the individuals want to listen to. They do not want their eardrums blasted out. And it's certainly not a heavy metal festival, as been reported in the Peterborough Telegraph. We want to put the festival on because we want to provide entertainment for the people who want to attend, the music lovers. We've made a point of organising the festival in such a way that we have a lot of local bands attending to let them showcase their capabilities, whereas they may not get that chance. I guess everybody's aware that since COVID, so many music kind of venues have closed down. The music industry, the festival industry is having a really tough time at the moment. But apart from the musicians and those attending, we also feel that for Peterborough this is good because the attendees will be bringing money into the area. We have a number of traders, both food traders and non-food traders attending, who are generally local. We have people staying in the local hotels. We are using wherever possible local suppliers, so marquees, PA systems, etc. We're actually planning to spend tens of thousands of pounds with these people. We're also supporting a local charity, Sue Ryder, the Sue Ryder Cancer Trust. We've invited them to come along to use the event as a fundraising for themselves. And we're also talking to the Nene Valley Railway to look at ways that we can collaborate together to bring them to the attention of our attendees and potentially vice versa. Just an aside from that, we have at present sold tickets to many people from Peterborough. We have volunteers coming as volunteer stewards, or hopefully coming as volunteer stewards from Peterborough, and not just from Peterborough, from the very local area, the Wistow Way area. We actually have one person volunteering from Svenskeby, I believe it's pronounced. So there is a lot of local support. Our company is not run for profit. So any assertions that we're in this for money are totally wrong. In fact, we're more likely to end up spending our own money on this. None of us, not a single person, takes any money in salary, wages, expenses, or anything. And in the unlikely event we make any money, we will just put that to one side for whatever our next event is. As has already been said, we're looking at running for 4 days. Our music will finish, providing you grant us the licence, at 11 o'clock every night. That is what we've put in through the licence application. We have also asked for the ability to serve food till 11:30. That will allow our customers to get something to eat. Sorry, did I say 11:30? That will allow our customers to get something to eat before they go to bed, basically. I've already said that the age bracket will generally be between 50 and 70. Again, we've worked on very similar festivals. We know that will be what will happen. We may get younger people. But again, just to point out, our audience are a very discerning group of music lovers. The age in itself implies they will be well behaved, I would suggest. And again, to counter one of the objections we've received, they are not alcohol-fueled strangers at the end of somebody's road. That just isn't the type of people that we attract. Again, as an aside, and I hope I'm allowed to put this in just to show some context to some of this. Yesterday, I received a message from a serving police officer who is a member of one of the bands, just to express his incredulity at some of the comments that had been raised about the festival itself and the attendees. So what we've tried to do up to this point is also, albeit slightly lately, and this may come up later, I guess, engage with the local community. Trevor and myself last week attended a parish council meeting in Waterford, at which some of the people here were present, to hopefully try and reassure them that we weren't trying to do anything untoward. Also, together with our associates here from the Neame Park Trust, we put together some frequently answered questions, which are available on our website, on the Trust's website, and last week Trevor also went round and posted a copy of these FAQs through the door of everybody we were aware of that had made a representation. So everybody hopefully has seen those. And a copy of those are in the pack-up which we sent to you. So that really ends my introduction. I'd just like to move on before I go into the 4 areas that you've already talked about, with a few comments about representations. We've done some analysis of the representations, and possibly some of these figures are now wrong, because we were only aware of 52 representations against, unless the 70 referred to were those 4 as well. I don't know, but we were only forwarded 52. So those 52 that we received anyway, our analysis shows were actually only from 32 households, and one of those provided 4 representations from a single address. There are also representations attributed to a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. I don't know the legality or anything about that, but it seems strange to me. Again, looking roughly at the numbers, those representations, looking at the 52, because as I say, we didn't have the 70, equate to about 6% of the households within the Wistow Way area, which to us suggests that 94% of the people in that area had no issues. There wasn't a single representation from outside the Wistow Way area, and I hope I'm allowed to say that a lot of the information or the objections within those representations are totally and utterly unfounded and presented with no evidence whatsoever. I am also aware that there were 24 representations provided that supported the festival. Again, it appears that they don't appear in anything that's come up. So what I'd like to do then is move into the mitigation about the areas that have come up in the representations. The first thing I'd like to point out is, and forgive me, Mr. Chairman, in your introduction, you mentioned Lynch Meadow, Lynch Farm. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we announced publicly that we would no longer be using Lynch Farm as the campsite. We did that again in conjunction with our associates here, based on the feelings of the local community. They didn't want us to use Lynch Farm, so we listened to what they said to us, and we moved the campsite of our own volition from Lynch Farm into the Horse Meadow. It may not be relevant in here, but just to point out that that in itself will cost us many thousands of pounds to make that move. I can go into details of why I say that if you'd like. So, moving on to the 4 areas, we've looked at the 4 statutory objectives in the revised guidance of the Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and I'll go through each of these in turn, possibly in a different order, I think, to how you put them up. So first of all, the prevention of crime and disorder. We've talked via the SAG. We have engaged with the SAG already, and we plan to have a further meeting with the SAG towards the end of this month. We've taken advice from them and the police, specifically for the crime and disorder side, and have already employed the services of a local security firm who were providing SIA licensed personnel to the event to ensure it's correctly supervised. Those personnel will carry out bag searches on people entering our arena to prevent them bringing any illegal items into the area, and they'll be there obviously to control the very unlikely instance of any unruly behaviour. We will also use the SIA to liaise with the police if, hopefully it won't be necessary, but if it is necessary. The police also advised us, they didn't insist, but they advised us that it might be prudent to have CCTV in the bar area. We've taken that on board, and we have already now made provision to have CCTV in the bar area. The CCTV will obviously be recorded, and those recordings could be used for any subsequent inquiries or issues should that happen. The bar area will also be policed by SIA personnel and also our volunteer stewards. The SIA personnel, stewards and management will all be provided with radios. So we will be in constant communication with each other so that we can react in the event of any untoward instances. And finally, on this issue, our festival area will be fenced off. We've ordered a lot of Harris fencing to fence off the area around the festival, and also to shore up some of the hedging around the horse meadow itself to avoid unauthorised intrusion either into horse meadow or into the music area itself. So they're the areas I'd like to bring up on the prevention of crime and disorder. Regarding public safety, we are already producing a full risk assessment and event management plan in conjunction with the SAG. We took advice from them on the first meeting we had as to how we should provide that. We've done further work on that, and we will be presenting that to the SAG again at the next meeting. Obviously, these are living documents which are currently in draft form because as things progress, we make changes to them to reflect the current situation. We've also gone through the guidance and the licensing guidance. I don't know if you want me to go through all of these areas, but I'll keep going until you tell me to stop. Fire safety is the first thing we've looked at. We have appointed a trained fire warden. This fire warden will check all our fire appliances twice a day. We are in the process of acquiring all the appropriate fire appliances in line with the Purple Guide and with other relevant documentation. As well as that, all the SIA personnel that we're employing are fire trained, and all the stewards will be provided with a fire brief from the warden prior to their first shift. So that should cover us for fire. We have also banned barbecues from the site. So there will be no barbecues of any type on the site. We have, again, with our colleagues, associates, I suppose I should call them, from Neame Park, checked all the access to the field, and we are more than happy that emergency vehicles can enter and exit the field as required for public safety reasons. We have, as I say already, we've spoken with the emergency services through the SAG. We've taken their advice. We've been in touch with the ambulance service, fire service and police through the SAG, and we've applied that advice rigorously both in our management plan and in our risk assessment. First aid training is the next. We have agreed with a company. We have a company waiting for us to sign a contract with them. Obviously, we haven't done that until the granting of the licence, who will be providing professional first aid services comprising of one EMT and a first responder. We will also have a vehicle, a first aid post-type vehicle on site. They will be on duty during the whole daytime when the public are on site, and at night they will be on call via the SIA. All of the SIA personnel are also first aid trained. Moving on to the safety of people leaving the premises, we believe, and our ticket sales show us, that the majority of the people will stay on the campsite at night, so they won't actually leave the Horse Meadow area. But for those that do, once again, we will have stewards and the SIA staff to assist them on leaving the site, and the Neen Park Trust staff are also making some provision for the safe entry and exit of the vehicle traffic. Waste disposal, we are again in the process, not yet contracted, of employing a local waste disposal firm. Neen Park themselves do not allow glass into the park, so obviously we've taken that on board. The only glass that we'll allow are things like spectacles, mobile phones, cameras and that kind of thing. Anybody trying to enter the site with glass in their possession will have it confiscated. We will have regular litter picking teams going around the area. We will have skips and so on and so forth. Bins will be regularly emptied. We've actually provided a couple of photographs to illustrate how this works at the similar festivals we've worked at. The photographs actually show the festival site on the Monday of departure, prior to the litter teams actually even going round. And if you have access to those pictures, you'll see that there's no litter at all, even before the litter teams start their patrols. And finally on this, the minimum capacity in the premises, making sure that we don't exceed limits. The marquees that we are intending to procure themselves can hold the full amount of ticket holders that we are planning on allowing. As we've said, we've capped the number of ticket sales ourselves to 1,000. Again, because we want to make this a kind of intimate, more mature function than some rave or whatever else. Moving on to what's possibly the most contentious issue, I would suggest, is the public nuisance. And there are two areas I'd like to look at here, if I may. The first being the noise, or the sound. Since we submitted our licence application, we have been in frequent contact with the Senior Environment and Pollution Officer at the PCC with regard to noise nuisance. We have had a list of conditions imposed on us, which, as the licensing officer has already said, we have agreed in writing to abide by. We have also utilised the services of a professional accredited acoustics company, as was required by the Environment and Pollution Officer. So we assume, well, we have to assume that the Environment and Pollution Officer is happy with the accreditation that this acoustics company have provided to her. So the figures I'm about to quote have been sent to us through this accredited agency and not just by us using the sound monitors on our mobile phones. We've provided some sound modelling, which again, hopefully you have access to. And the same company that we have employed to carry out the sound modelling will also, again, licence permitting, be present during the event to carry out monitoring as required by the conditions set by the Environment and Pollution Officer, and also to write the post-event report. We will also be supplying a telephone number that anybody with any issues, any complaints about the noise levels can ring. It will be a dedicated number for that purpose and that purpose only. It will be on our website and everywhere else that we're obliged to put it, so that any issues we can check up immediately. Those issues will obviously be logged and follow-up action can be taken as necessary. Can I also stress, before I go into the actual technical bit, if you like, that we, the directors, are very aware of the penalties that can be put upon us for not adhering to these conditions. None of us are rich men, and none of us have any intention, obviously, of incurring large fines due to transgressing these rules. So, moving on to some of the figures here. The Senior Environment and Pollution Officer has regularly referred to the Code of Practice with reference to this type of event. So all the rules and regulations come out of that Code of Practice. And from the Code of Practice, it states that the sound level at any noise-sensitive premises will not exceed the background noise level by more than 15 dB over a 15-minute period. That's the wording from her emails and from the document itself. The background noise level, as provided to us by the PCC, is 43 decibels, which obviously then allows, simple maths, a noise level of up to 58 decibels over that 15-minute period. The sound map, the acoustic modelling, which we have provided to you through the accredited acoustics company, shows that at the nearest sensitive point, which is a house on Svenskeby, the range will be within 45 to 49 decibels, which is well below the allowed limit, based on us having a sound level of 89 decibels at the mixing desk. And this is what we've agreed to. This is what our acoustics specialists will ensure are adhered to, and also our PA, our sound system engineers, will ensure that when they're setting up the system, that those figures have to be adhered to. Could I also add, though, that those figures, the 45 to 49 decibel range, take no account of any sound attenuation provided by the marquees themselves. They're talking as if the speakers were in an open field, or any additional measures which the PA company intend to take. We've already spoken to them about this, such as angling the speakers down towards the ground, so the sound is it's nice and loud, or as loud as we need it to be within the marquee, but it's going into the ground and therefore not travelling outside the marquee as it may do. Also, the absorption by the individuals within the marquee. Human bodies absorb a certain amount of sound. The speakers themselves won't be pointing towards the housing. We've been very careful. We, again, have provided a diagram showing how the speakers will either be running parallel to the housing or away from the housing. But again, that hasn't been taken into account. So we'd suggest that this 45 to 49 dB level is very much the worst case. Finally on that, oh, sorry, I've been corrected. Apparently the, which bit? The direction of the speakers. Sorry, the direction of the speakers has been taken into account. Please, I apologise for misleading you there. However, the marquee itself, the angling of the speakers, the people in there has not. And the other thing to mention, which is getting away from the sound side, is that as required by the conditions, we'll also place signs at the exits from the premises to ask people to keep the noise down as they leave the area. So that's it for the sound side. Moving on to the traffic. During our meeting with the local residents the other week, we understood, and we had been aware of this previously, that there have been issues ongoing for some considerable time with parking in the area around the houses there. So again, being aware of that, we have tried to take every measure we possibly can to ensure that we don't make that situation any worse. So the first thing is that, as I've already stated, we accept that most of the festival attendees, backed up by our ticket sales, will use the campsite, either in tents, motorhomes, camper vans, caravans, and therefore they will park on the horse meadow. So they may leave occasionally, just to go to a local shop or something, but generally they'll just stay. They'll arrive when they arrive between Thursday, Friday, whenever it is they turn up, and they'll leave probably on the Monday. Some may leave earlier. It's probably also worth pointing out at that juncture that, again, our experience from other festivals is that when we open the gates, we don't get a mass influx of people. People arrive in dribs and drabs. Because we intend to start on a Thursday at tea time, a lot of people will be working, so they won't come until later. A lot of people won't come on Thursday at all. They'll come on Friday because they're working. So there will not be a huge influx of traffic at any one time. Regarding the rest of the parking, the day visitors will utilise the existing car parks. We've arranged through our associates here a 50% reduction for the standard charges on those car parks in an endeavour to encourage everybody to use those car parks. And also, all of the traffic now, because we're not using Ham Lane entrance, come down through Ham Lane, through the normal car park. There will be signage. There will also be Neame Park Trust staff available to assist with directing those people to the correct car parks. The other thing that we feel, and again, we could be argued that this isn't correct, we don't believe that people coming from outside the very local Peterborough area will even know of the existence of the Wistow Way housing area. They will look on the maps that we have now put on our website, which show them how to enter the Neame Park area, show them where the car parking is. There is no indication of Wistow Way as a parking area on there. So we would like to suggest that unless you're local, you don't even know it's there, and you'll use the parking facilities as suggested. We've also provided things like postcodes, what 3 words, and everything we can think of to ensure that people park where they are supposed to park. So the final of the areas is the protection of the children from harm. Again, we're fully aware of the requirements of doing this, and we've taken various actions. Before I go into the actions that we've taken, it's probably worth, again, adding some context to this. At present, for the festival itself, we have sold 6 in total 4-day tickets for under 16s and 2 one-day tickets for under 16s. So we're talking about a total at present of 8 individuals under the age of 16. And some of those are between the 16 and 10 age bracket, and some are below 10. But we are talking about a very small amount of people here. So for those small amount of people, we will operate the standard Challenge 25 policy at the bar. So anyone looking under the age of 25 years old will be asked to provide proof of age. We will have CCTV at the bar, as I've already stated, and it'll be permanently supervised by SIA personnel. Children will be prohibited from entering the bar area. Any children that move towards the bar area will just be asked through the SIA or the bar staff, through the responsible adult, to remove the child from the bar area. If we unfortunately do find anyone under the age of 18 consuming alcohol, obviously the security people will be involved in this. The alcohol will be confiscated. Their responsible adult will be contacted, and potentially this could lead to the ejection of those people from the arena. We certainly hope that doesn't happen. And again, our experience from other similar events, none of us have ever seen it happen. To ensure, I've mentioned responsible adults a couple of times, to ensure that we can achieve that, anybody under the age of 16 has to be accompanied by a responsible adult. We will not sell a ticket to anybody under that age unless they are bought in conjunction with adult tickets. And the final point on this is that we've also put in procedures for a lost child situation. They will be detailed in our stewards' handbooks. All of our stewards will receive a handbook which gives them direction what to do in certain circumstances. but obviously they'll also be briefed on all those procedures. So we have procedures in place, like if we have a lost child, we don't shout over the radio, there's a lost child, because that gets people panicking. We will use a code word to alert the rest of the security stewarding team that there is a lost child, and we can take appropriate action from there. So that covers the 4 main areas. Before I summarise, there are just a couple of miscellaneous areas I'd like to talk about, if I may. One already covered by the licensing officer here, and this was to do with the questions about the open-ended nature of the licence application. The reason we did it like that was because we were advised to do it like that. So that is why we put the licence in that way. We have absolutely no intention of running another festival this year. Not a 1-day craft fair, not a 2-day anything. And I mean, this is so much work for the 3 of us. The last thing we need, and the last thing our partners need, is us disappearing off the amount of time that we have done so far trying to organise something else. So please be assured we have absolutely no intention of running another festival other than this one in Neen Park this year. And one final thing to mention, which is with regard to public health. In the representations, we got some unfounded remarks about toilet facilities, shower facilities, how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that. In fact, one even said we had no toilet facilities. We don't know how that comes about. What we have done is, again, going back to my original opening remarks about the age and the demographic of the people attending, we've actually hired what we're calling luxury loos, posh loos, whatever you may like. We've all seen, well, I say we've all seen, many of us have seen these blue cubicles that get fairly horrible at some festivals. We don't want those. People of our age certainly don't want those. The ladies who go, definitely, and even the children who go, they don't want them. So we've spent more money than we needed to provide these luxury toilets. The toilets will be deep cleaned and emptied on a daily basis. We have also employed an attendant for 7 hours per day to ensure that after the morning cleaning, the toilets are kept clean for the rest of the period. We've also, again, thankfully, in association with Neen Park Trust, secured the use of the shower facilities within the boat club for the use of our festival attendees. So again, rather than having showers in cubicles in the middle of the field, they've actually got the use of the proper shower facility within the boat club. So again, that's just a quick remark on the public health side. So I'm going to summarise now. Our festival is run by music lovers for music lovers. That's the way we've done it. All of our organisers, myself, Trevor, Andrew, and the other people who are helping us out who aren't company directors, are all professional people who have taken every possible step that we can see to provide sensible and practical mitigations to everything that we have been challenged with. We also feel we've gone above and beyond what we've been asked to do. For example, the moving of the campsite when it wasn't forced upon us, the hiring of the posh loos, and other things like that. We have absolutely no intention to cause any problems for anyone living locally, and hopefully the interaction we've had with the local community and so forth proves that. We feel that we've met every objection raised. And just to finish, as I've said right at the start, Neen Valley Rock Festival is not Glastonbury. It is not Download. It is a maximum of 1,000 people of a 50 to 70 mainly age group meeting in a quiet and orderly fashion to enjoy some music. So we would hope, based on my representations, that you will approve our application. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions for the applicant from the subcommittee?
Just one quick one.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Through you, Chair. Just a quick one. Lots of mitigation going on, lots of things going on. The campsite was moved. You didn't mention how you're going to manage that campsite from 11 p.m. to 11 a.m. I'm just interested how that will be managed.
Right. I'm not sure which bit you mean, but when... Whoop. Yeah. Yeah, the management, are you talking about the management in the new position as opposed to the old position, or just generally how we're going to manage it?
What I'm talking about is you moved the campsite. What I'm interested in is you're going to have the majority of the attendees in the campsite, and you've talked about lots of mitigation through the day to 11 p.m. The question I'm asking is, how, on the basis of what's going on in the campsite, noise, partying, or whatever.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
The point I'm trying to make is, so you manage the day piece, you put lots of mitigation in there. What are you doing overnight? Because it would probably, that 3 o'clock in the morning is when it would be the most harm, if you like, to the locals, if they're all cracking on again. I'm sorry, if they're doing their bit at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, right. Well, again, if I can answer that. First thing I'll say is I'll go back to the demographic. Most of the people of the age group that we are having going, by the time they've finished at 11 o'clock, maybe had a bite to eat, they go back for their Ovaltine and go to bed. I mean, that might sound a kind of flippant way of answering your question, but it is the truth. They want to get up the next morning to enjoy what is happening the next day. They don't sit up till the middle of the night playing music, shouting at each other. However, in the very unlikely circumstance that that happens, we will have SIA staff within the campsite all night. Those SIA staff are briefed already, but will be rebriefed, that they are to gently persuade people that it's time for bed, to turn any noise off, and to act responsibly to those around them and the neighbours. I can also add to that, the fact of the matter actually is that probably before the SIA even turned up, their neighbours would have said to them, "Oi, we're trying to sleep." And, I can't say it enough, and I can't stress it enough. These are, I don't want to say old people, these are older people. There to enjoy themselves. It's not a rave. I can't say any more. I don't think. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, Councillor Warren.
I just want a little bit more context. Obviously, I want to know a bit more about your history so we know what's going forward. So, obviously, you talked about running in previous festivals, and I want to know, have you had any environmental enforcement instances at previous festivals, and how you dealt with them? And have you had any licensing breaches from your previous festivals that you've arranged?
Right. Our involvement has been not as the applicant for the festivals, so not all the information comes through us. What I can say is that the festivals that I've been involved in, I'm not aware of any actions taken. There was one occasion once where something was raised. There was a noise breach, but was subsequently shown to be somewhere else entirely, a completely different event. So I'm not aware of any in terms of noise breaches, in terms of unruly behaviour, anything else at all. I mean, we are people that want to be there for music. We haven't got any interest in doing anything else. So no, I think is a simple answer to that. I can't think of any that I've been involved in, and I don't know about Tony.
No, because they're the same ones. Sorry, they're the same festivals as Trevor's been involved in, so the answer's no as well.
I just wanted to ask, you said before that you weren't planning to hold any other events under the terms of this licence. Is this an event you're planning to hold every year going forward, or will it be at the same time every year?
I think my answer has to be on that. Our intention may be, if we're successful this year, to run it again. We obviously have to review what happens this year. Look, did it work in the way we wanted it to? Were our customers happy? Was it financially viable, or would it be financially viable for us to run another festival? And of course, looking at what we're talking about here, did we have any problems that we now feel that maybe we couldn't overcome? We're 100% sure that last one won't happen, but I guess we have to think that it's a potential possibility. So I think the answer to your question has to be maybe. And I'm not trying to evade your question. I'm just saying because until the event has been run, we can't decide really whether the facility that was provided was exactly what we wanted. We may actually look at doing it again, but let's say in a different location. As for the timing, again, the timing was forced upon us almost this year because of another similar festival that was going to be running when we actually wanted this one to run originally. So we moved ours so we didn't clash. So again, the timing is very difficult to answer. But again, if it works for us this year, I see no reason why we wouldn't look at the same timing. So apologies, I can't be any more specific than that. But I think there are so many variables involved in whether we want to. If I end up by saying we would probably like to, but whether it's in the same place and at the same time, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, that completely understand what you're saying, and obviously you won't know till the event has happened. The reason for that particular line of questioning is to try and add some reassurance to some of the concerns from the residents about the terms of the licence and whether it's going to be open for other events or just this one. But I think you've answered that very clearly, so thank you. I don't have any further questions. Any further questions? No. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or did you want your witnesses to address us, or is there anything they wanted to add? Do we have any questions for the witnesses? Councillor Philpin? Yeah.
Just a quick one. Obviously, the limited company been set up for this particular event. Are you planning on using that as Neem Park as a vehicle to do other things? It's a similar question to what was asked before, but to yourselves.
So just to be very clear, we are very separate companies. So Neem Valley Rock Festival came to us, having previously been involved in a project in a festival at the showground. And they came to us to ask us whether we might have a space that they could hire from us to base their festival. So that's our relationship with Neem Valley Rock Festival. And I guess we have a number of partners that we work with in very similar ways in other places across the estate that we look after as a trust. So for us, it's an example of a number of different relationships that we have with a number of companies who hire our spaces from us. Clearly, we have a closer relationship with Neem Valley Rock Festival because we have been very concerned about the relationship and the impact of the festival on our neighbours in our area. So our relationship has become closer, and we've worked much more closely with Neem Valley Rock Festival than we would normally with companies who are hiring our spaces, so that we can mitigate some of the concerns that our neighbours have.
If there's no further questions, then thank you. I will now move on to invite Councillor Day to give her reasons for objecting to the application.
Thank you, Chair. So just to give a bit of context as well, residents initially contacted me back in May and were very alarmed when they found out that a rock festival was being proposed on the 31st of August to the 3rd of September. There were adverts that were going out, but it was difficult to find out more about that. And can I note that this includes a Sunday night when residents have work the next day, and it's also at the start of the school term. Obviously, this festival's at Neem Park Trust, and this initially included, as has been mentioned, a campsite at Lynch Farm. The campsite location was a real cause of concern for residents, as this proposed campsite area was a field that backed closely onto residential areas such as Svenskaby and the Rookery. They were concerned that having a campsite following a 4-day festival that ended at 11 p.m. each evening would cause noise and disturbance issue in what is a quiet and peaceful area to live in. So myself and Councillor Kirsty Knight held a public meeting. Now this is really important. We only publicised this public meeting to about 4 or 5 streets that we felt that were affected by the campsite. We had over 50 residents attending. We didn't leaflet the whole of Wistow Way to let everybody know about the public meeting. Had we done that and we found out afterwards that lots of other people would have liked to have gone to that public meeting. So it wasn't the whole of Wistow Way that was at that initial public meeting. And we held that meeting to discuss any of the concerns that residents might have had. Myself and Councillor Knight had met with Neem Park Trust, so we had some bullet points. We'd met with Amanda and Andrew McDermott, so we had some bullet points to present to them. We then asked at the meeting, there was a suggestion that we form a steering group, and we decided to form a steering group. Everybody that gave us their emails from that public meeting were then invited to be part of the steering group if they would like to be part of it. And at this point, I want to thank Neem Park Trust for meeting with that steering group of residents and with the organisers' decision following the 70 representation. I was clearly told by licensing committee there were 70 representations which objected to the festival, and there were 20 that were in support of it, but they weren't valid because they weren't relevant to the licensing application, and that's what I was told by the licensing team. But I do want to thank Neem Park Trust and the organisers for then deciding to move the campsite away from Lynch Farm. I felt this was a really good example of how discussion and dialogue can help make changes needed to ensure that residents' concerns are listened to and that they are taken on board and that changes can be made. I also want to thank Neem Valley Rock Festival for attending a parish council meeting on the 28th of July and answering questions about concerns our residents had. Having said that, residents had hoped to meet with the organisers earlier at the meeting with MPT, although MPT decided not to include Neem Valley Rock Festival at that point, at that first meeting on the 7th of June, and residents and organisers were both disappointed with this decision. However, whilst the campsite has been moved from Lynch Farm to Horse Meadows, residents are still concerned about the proximity the festival and stages still have to nearby residential areas. The festival, as mentioned, has been situated on Horse Meadow, and this is still quite close to residential areas, only 350 metres away. This is 4 days and 42 hours of at least continuous music from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. next to homes where both elderly people and families live. Would anyone here want a music festival to take place 350 metres from their home? We understand that Neem Valley Rock Festival organisers didn't expect such a reaction from residents and have been shocked by the sentiment and upset and depth of feeling from residents. We feel that Neem Park Trust should maybe have at least been aware of some of the concerns from neighbouring residents before agreeing to host the festival. It might have been better if the organisers had done a bit more research on the area. I know they're not local, but to best understand the area, the potential issues and any potential concerns neighbouring residents may have had. Residents are also concerned about car parking traffic issues. During the Peterborough Celebrates Festival, Wistow Way and neighbouring streets were negatively affected by many people parking their cars for free so they could attend the Peterborough Celebrates Festival. We have photos of this problem, and if this festival is to go ahead, then we would ask at the very least that MPT make parking free for this event so that streets that sit closely to the park are not adversely affected. It's worth noting as well, this has been an ongoing problem, and since Neem Park Trust introduced parking charges, People parking in neighbouring streets to access Neem Park have been an issue that continually affects local residents, particularly on streets such as Cherryfield, which that's a road just off Ham Lane, and even though there are double yellow lines, there are often cars always parked down there just to access the park in normal day-to-day business. The Rookery is also affected by this type of parking, Shearwater, Farley Fields and Wistow Way itself. Now, I know the applicants have said that the doubt that lots of local people will come and park in those areas, but I think local people will come to the festival, and I think there is a potential that parking could be an issue. Residents also have concerns about how a music festival may affect the local wildlife and ecology of the park. I know residents are here to speak on some of these issues in more depth themselves, and so I will allow them to comment on what issues are of most concern to them. In summary, however, the main concern for residents at this present time are noise from the festival, impacts on wildlife and ecology, health and safety concerns, and car parking. We do hope, as we go forward, that NPT can engage with residents through either a focus group or a residents committee to work together going forward and be able to engage with proposals and plans that may affect residents in the future and look at how they might affect or how some of those effects can be mitigated. There are also concerns, as has been mentioned, that this is an open-ended licence for 365 days a year and that this might be sort of a regularly occurring event. So as a local councillor, on behalf of local residents, I ask that this licensing committee carefully listens to residents and considers whether this location is the right place for a 4-day music festival. There are other locations in the city. I know they've been dismissed. The Embankment, for example, I know that the organisers said that they felt that there were issues with drugs in that particular area. However, I use the Embankment a lot for dog walking, and I find it to be okay actually, and not deserving of the name that it's picked up. But there are other areas in the city. But thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions from the committee to Councillor Day? No. I have a question, which is, see in the agenda pack, section 7 details the conditions that the applicant has agreed to. Do you think those go far enough to address all the concerns you've raised, or are there any other further conditions you would like to see were the licence to be agreed today?
Yeah, as I've mentioned, I think free car parking would be a good condition, so that residents that are local don't utilise streets around the residential streets around the area. I know that some of the residents are going to comment more on things like noise, because I think even though it sounds really good that we're going to stick to the 45 to 49 decibels, I still think residents are going to hear that as a constant continuous noise in what is a very quiet area of the city where residents live. So I know residents are going to touch more upon those subjects, and I'll allow them to do that. But those are definitely the key concerns: is the noise in such a quiet area, and the car parking. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you, Councillor Day. Could I invite Dawn Sadler to give her reasons for objecting to the application?
Thanks very much for letting me speak. Can I just say that I'm also speaking on behalf of my daughter, Natalie Hall. She lives in Svenskeby with my 2 young grandchildren, actually, and they're a school age as well. And I'm a little confused because my first point was about the proposal of 4 events on the report, but I hear today it could be 4 days a year, so there's confusion around that. However, please can you give full consideration when deliberating this licence? Because the code of practice given is environmental noise control at concerts, and this guidance allows 15 decibels above the background noise levels, which is incredibly loud. And so say like, my understanding was that they were proposing 4 events a year, 4 days a year. So that could possibly mean that local residents are having this nuisance 11 till 11, 16 days a year. However, I'll ask for clarification of the stated days. I thought it was 4 events a year, and that's what's on the report. So if you could check that, because that's not what's been stated by the applicant today. However, we've been given the representative background noise level of 43 by the council, so that gives a maximum noise level of 58 at the nearest residential home. So this was interesting to me because, believe it or not, I'm an environmental health officer myself, and I've worked in noise nuisance for 32 years, and I worked for 10 years at Peterborough City Council as well, in the noise team. So I thought, well, I'll find out where is this representative noise background noise level. And lo and behold, we found out that it was at Tesco's and Napier Place, one of the noisiest areas of Alton Wistow that you could ever imagine. So I have argued that this is not representative of Svenskeby at all. So please can you give full consideration to that fact that this background noise level that's been given as highly representative is not, in my opinion, and a lot of others, representative at all to the nearest residentials, which is Svenskeby. So my 2 grandchildren live in Svenskeby, as I said, and I decided to go and take my own noise readings just out of interest, just for my own thoughts about what I'm going to say today. And I got a background noise level, which I believe you've got some photographs of my noise readings. And at maximum, there were 36 dB LAEQ. And I did those over an hour, 8:40 to 9:40, nice and quiet, normal. It's normal, that's normal for Alton Wistow, Svenskeby. Very quiet, very low wind. So as you can see, that's giving another 7 decibels of what I saw to be a good representative background noise level for Svenskeby residents. And I think this is significant, and please can you give this some due consideration. So my grandchildren will have to endure every time this music event occurs. They've not only got the 4358, but that other 7 on top as well. So the impact of the noise from these events is going to allow a 22 decibels above their normal representative background noise level. If my noise levels that I took on that day are to be taken into consideration. So can I just say that this code of practice on environmental noise control is actually very applicable to huge concerts, and this is not applicable in this case. That's why they give the 15 decibels above background noise level. The concert these applies to are huge. They occur on one day. The local residents enjoy it because they can hear every word of that music because it's 15 decibels above the background noise level. Everybody goes home, it's over and done with on that evening. Not so this day. They have decided, even though they say they want to work with local residents, we had no consultation before they decided this is what they're going to apply for. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night and Sunday night. No compromise on, all right, well, we'll just do Saturday and Sunday or Friday and Saturday. No, we're going to do it 4 days. So, in my opinion, hence the large amount of objections from local residents, which does equate to 70 on the report. So, please can you keep in mind that allowing this licence will have a huge effect on the affected local residents, their day-to-day lives and their enjoyments of their homes. This is a 365-day application. And despite what they say, we just don't know what else is going to happen. Could you also look at that code of practice, please, on environmental noise control at concerts? Because they are looking at the lower band frequencies of 63 and 125 hertz. Now, they are going to allow a maximum level of 70 decibels in those low frequency bands, and they are incredibly wide bands which travel for miles. And we can hear lots of things already, believe me, in Alton Wistow, that we hear from the showground, we hear from the Neem Park when they're having a daily event. So that then is 27 decibels over the representative background noise level given by the council. So they're the bassier beats, the bump beats, the bumping from the music. And that will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 11 a.m. till 11 p.m. That's what this one event, that's all we know about at the moment. So you may know Alton Wistow is just a quiet residential area. It's like a small village. This venue is totally wrong for this rock festival or any other large music event to take place, even for one day a year. So never mind 16 plus days if they had the 4 events that they say in the report. So the applicant has seemingly agreed 20 proposed noise control conditions, which you may or may not adhere to this licence. It's actually whether you decide that, is my understanding, if they're applicable to this licence and whether they'll prevent the nuisance. And then there's another raft of proposals to meet the other licensing objectives. Now, if you were looking at this from a health and safety point of view about control measures, this shows you that these amazing amount of control measures means this venue is not applicable to the granting of this licence. Why would you need so much control? It's because of the area that they're proposing it in. So my other thoughts are that the Environmental Health team, Peterborough City Council, were going to object to this, but they've been persuaded that they can control it with the 20 or so huge amount of control measures that are going to put in. It's a bit disappointing. So my understanding, however, is that Peterborough City Council are going to have no out-of-hours noise service or complaint service for local residents at all. So we're going to have, my understanding from the applicant, one telephone number for potentially 70 plus people phoning up that complaints number. How on earth are they going to be able to manage that? And local residents will be complaining. This is going to be heard loud and clear, this music. So anyway, to finish, could I also point you in the direction of another noise, high status noise guidance, which I think I have given you, has been given in the pack, and it is BS 4142. It's a method for rating and assessing industrial and commercial sound. Now, the applicant may say, well, that's not applicable to this. However, can I just point your, I have put it in the pack. I think you have got it as information. If not, I have got it here with me now. And it's all, if you could look at section 11, which is very interesting. A difference of around plus 10 dB or more is likely to be an indication of a significant adverse impact depending on the context. Now, this is going to be 15 decibels above. That is all right. You may say, well, the applicant may say, well, that's not applicable guidance. But I just thought I'd give you something else to think about when allowing this 15 decibels above background noise level. It's an indication of a significant adverse effect at local residents' homes. So please can you give this and my points full consideration, and whether or not you grant this licence or not?
Thank you very much. Can I just confirm that the proposal is for 4 concert days, not 4 four-day events?
I don't know, I'm
Yes.
afraid. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's the
My
proposal.
understanding is from the report it was 4 events a year.
No, it's 4 concert days is the conditions that we've been asked to approve.
4 concert days a year. Thank you
So,
very much for the
instance,
approval. Thanks.
the event proposed would be those 4 days.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will give the applicant as well a chance to respond once all the objections have been heard. Does the committee have any questions for Dawn Sadler? No. In that case, could I invite Bob and Susan Bailey to give their reasons for objecting to the application?
Sorry, there's loads of middle ones. Good afternoon. My wife's sitting over there, so we've been through a script and ripped it up, and now I find myself, I thought I'd get 3 minutes, so I've sort of paraphrased an awful lot here and lost a bit, but never mind. A lot of what I'm going to say I know I'm repeating what you've already heard, so excuse me. I am the resident that's closest, we are the resident that's closest to this festival, and because of that I've found myself as this unofficial steering group. But there are a couple of questions which I'd like, but I've got a presentation here. I'm still concerned and confused with the councillor over there asked about these other events that can be under the licence, the terms of the licence. If it was, am I right, please? If other events through the year on that Horse Meadow, under 500, there can be any number of events possible that year. Is that correct? Under that licence?
Yes, that is correct.
So consequently, granting the licence to Horse Meadow will effectively be an open licence for any event under 500. Is that correct?
Yes.
It is. I'm getting some nods of just read it.
Yes,
Do excuse me,
legal
Councillor.
officer has confirmed, yes, that is correct.
Okay, so do excuse me, I need to know about these things. So therefore, I'm mindful, but may I just make a start then? I'm not objecting to a rock festival. It's the positioning of it that is my objection. And bearing in mind, we've got the huge acreage of Ferry Meadows, and I cannot understand why it has to be put there. I have to take a jaundiced view and say to you, I just worry about these other events that can now be held on what was a horse meadow, and it was literally that. And some of you will know is part of the floodplain. And let's hope it doesn't rain over the weekend. So that's what I'm objecting to. And it's the effect on a well-established and a very quiet rural area within the city. And those of you who know Svenska, we all understand that. I will talk a bit more in a moment. After reading all the details of the 50 or so objections to the festival, ranging from emergency access to parking issues, and there's been loads of them, I read it from a personal point of view that it's the noise pollution which is the key and concerns most of the residents that I know in this area, and I'll come to that in a moment. This application, if granted, will be setting a precedent for the use of Ferry Meadows Horse Meadow in the future, and I think that's being endorsed now by the answer to my question a few moments ago, and that makes me even more concerned since I've moved into this room and heard this. My wife and I were the first people to move into Svenskeby 37 years ago, even before the pub was open, so that shows how long ago that was. And we have seen Alton Wistow grow over all this time. And it's a very small part of Peterborough, but it has developed into a jewel within the crown of the development of Peterborough. I think if one goes back to the days of the Development Corporation, when they decided to bring that Swedish development in there, I live in one of those houses, it was quite revolutionary in its time, and the Development Corporation were brilliant about lots of things they did, and this is one of them. Mindful of this hearing today, I've spoken to 40 of the 44 residences of those houses in the Rookery. I'm not certain if you know where the Rookery is. It's a small area, much like Svenskaby, but just the other side of the riding Sable. I wanted to know if their feelings were the same as the feelings of those at Svenskaby. Were they alarmed at the licence application, as we were the nearest properties to the festival site, because it could have just been our own personal feelings. They were all appalled, but not surprised that the Neem Park Trust had the audaciousness to actually suggest that this should be so close to their neighbours, who they boast about living with their friends and neighbours with all their developments. And it's in their manifesto. All 40 fundamentally agree with my thoughts. And unlike the other percentage that was given earlier about those that not, this is 90+% of everybody in the Rookery agreeing with this, my thoughts. So I took my thoughts to the parish council meeting, whenever it was, and put my views to the two directors of this festival, the two that are currently in this room. One of them was particularly, in my opinion, indifferent and sounded almost scornful to my concerns. I put it to others afterwards, thinking this was just Bob feeling Bob's way, and I was joined by other people in that room with my general feelings. I asked this particular director about the noise levels at the campsite after about 11:30, because the noise will be switched off at 11 because it's in the code of practice. And the answer was, and it's just been mentioned by them, but I quote, this was in a public meeting in a parish council hall. As the audience would be 50 plus, they would be all tucked up in bed with their cocoa by then. They again, this demographic, don't need loud music, he also retorted. There's not much more one can say about that, other than that's someone's a personal opinion. I just seem to remember when I was 50 plus, I was still going to concerts, still enjoying a glass of wine and beer, and I'm still having a great good time at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know why the generations have changed since I was 20 odd years since I was that age. It's not the demographic that I'm familiar with. Well, it's the demographic I'm familiar with, not the attitude of the demographic I'm with. And I used to go to concerts, rock concerts, and do all sorts. I grew up, I'm going to talk about this in a moment, I grew up with the era of modern music in the 60s and 70s. And it was great. And I was young and we enjoyed it, and that love of music stays with you all your life. So again, I don't understand this demographic of 50 pluses. Crikey, you want to be 70 plus and you still bloody enjoy myself. Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't have said that. I looked up the sound levels of a typical rock band. It's easy to look these things up, isn't it, with modern technology? And it's come back in 2 or 3 searches. A rock band will produce decibel levels of 100 to 130 decibels. But that's what you did when you went to a concert. You wanted the music to absorb you, didn't you? And then you start singing along and you get the energy from the crowd and the audience. But we're 50 plus, we won't need to be doing that. That was a very loud noise. They say, the organisers, that their noise output at their mixing table, if I've got the terminology correct, will be between, well, they've just actually said in this hall, 89 decibels. So we're going to have a rock concert, but quite considerably under those levels. The rock part of the concert, and I'm getting nods over there. I do not get any confidence from this management team of running an event of this scale, having questioned with others at the recent Parish Council. The pictures presented of the campsite were at the showground last year. Some of them were at the showground last year, when I believe, and I stand to be very corrected here, they only had 500 people there. And yes, okay, it was clean and tidy, but look at the acreage that they were on. I don't think that's very representative, if you've got the map in front of you, how small that campsite is, which incidentally they're going to put 250 pictures on, if they can. A Caravan Club guidelines will never even possibly get close to that figure. It is, quite simply, a festival will be an invasion of the quiet enjoyment of a well-established rural area, as I've said. Please remember, as you decide, and this is being repeated, I know, the demographics of the residential area is a mixture of young children and the retired generation. And the generation, I've said here, that grew up in the 50s and 60s. I do not wish to come over as a killjoy. A lot of issue in the paper is these older people should let the young people get on with it and enjoy it. Well, is it nimblism comes into place here somewhere along the line? I think I had to look that word up. It will be a summer evenings, and windows will be open. Those that go to bed earlier, the older generation, won't want 4 nights from 8, 9, 10 at night onwards with these levels of sound. Incidentally, the base levels given at the Tesco site of, I can't remember what it said, they don't take into consideration the noise levels at 8 o'clock at night, when there's no traffic noise, hardly any noise. And in this particular area, I can sit in my garden, and the only company I have is a couple of pigeons cooing at each other and a blackbird, and just an absolute quiet. And that's one of the reasons I've stayed in Svenskeby for all these years. And it's one of the reasons that people move to this lovely part of town. Well, I'm saying, I keep repeating myself here. Just remember, it's 11 to 11. We've done all that. I also am aware that the PCC had put these 20, and again, I'm sorry to repeat, but we weren't rehearsed here, 20 additional comments about noise. Well, that's wonderful, but why 20? It makes me wonder why. But of course, it's gone into the code of practice, which the organisers, have to uphold to. But of course it does, and so they will. They need to, or they'll be in trouble. But then the City Council aren't going to send anybody along to check that this is going on, and this is sensitive. It's a long 4 days without any real control and opportunity to turn the volumes down. To get into one telephone number, can you imagine it? If I'm complaining, how many other people are going to complain? It doesn't bear thinking about. Excuse me a moment. I know I don't have the mandate to speak for my neighbours in Norton Wistow. But I have spoken to so many of them about this potential disturbance and noise at this festival. Will create, and it will, but not just for the 1 day, the 4 days. But they all share my concerns. Again, I don't understand the low percentages we were given earlier. To conclude, and again you've been asked this, but I'm asking you directly. How would you like, it says ask a licence committee, how would you like and feel about having a rock festival, 350 meters from your house over these 4 days, from 11 to 11, They say that it will be 12 hours of continuous music for the 3 of those days. That's 42 hours, I calculate, perhaps within an hour or 2. Plus, of course, we then got 250 pictures potentially of campsites. Everybody going to bed with a cocoa. This proposal is so close to a proximity of a quiet rural community. I do find it quite unacceptable. The campsite that everybody says was moved, they had to move it to get even close to the license. It was absolutely audacious to even put a campsite up. And again, I look at the Name Park Trust as part of that. So I conclude, Chairman, at last. Please don't grant this licence, gentlemen. I implore you, on behalf of the residents of Alton Wistow, to decline this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? No. Is Neil Fife in attendance? No. Okay. Is Paul Rogerson? No. We've got Steve Swan. Yep, if I could write Steve Swan.
Me. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. I'd like to speak basically on the information provided with the licence application 1 and 5.2s on the assumption this is the information available for making the decision on this application. In my opinion, the information provided with the application is lacking in lots of detail and doesn't give any confidence that this proposed event has been sufficiently planned and will be managed in a safe and secure manner. The Rock Festival and associated camping site will be located in Horse Meadow in a field previously used by the riding school. Appreciate we already said that. Although the licence includes for the campsite, it is my understanding this need not have been included within the licence application. And it is also acknowledged, and it's appreciated too, that the location of the campsite has been changed from that stated in the original licence application. Right, I'd like to move on to security now. The licence states the event will be staffed by professional security personnel supported by volunteer stewards. A minimum of 2 Security Industrial Authority or SIA licensed entrance supervisors will be on duty at the access to the music festival and when at both access points to the campsite. No total numbers of staff for the event are given, either for professionals or for volunteer stewards. Volunteers will receive a handbook in advance of the festival, setting out the responsibilities and procedures to be followed. That is what the licence says. In my opinion, that's totally inadequate, and that it should be at least supplemented by comprehensive briefings and training, toolbox talks, if you like, before the event to make sure everybody knows what they should be doing. Just moving on more with health and safety, there's no risk assessments, management plans, safety plans that have been provided with the licence. Okay, it's been mentioned there in draft form at the moment, and these are in hand. I can't understand how a licence can be approved without these things being in place. I mean, this event will be required to comply with the Construction Design and Management 2015 regulations and for the entertainment industry, CDM in short. Particularly building, fitting out and taking down temporary structures for staging marquees, sanitation facilities, all fall under CDM requirements. Specified roles and responsibilities need to be defined. Named individuals for all roles must be competent. The particular roles I'm talking about, the client needs to be defined. Who is the client? Is it Nen Park Trust? Is it Nen Valley Rock Festival? Who is it? Very necessary. Principal contractor needs to be defined, and principal designer needs to be defined. You may find this strange, as if I'm talking about a construction project. This applies to the entertainment industry. It is law. It is legal. So they will need to be defined. Although notification is often required to the HSC, I suspect it won't be in the form of an F10 form. These are for projects that last for 30 working days, which this won't, or have 20 workers working at the same time, or exceed 500 person days. I suspect it doesn't fall into those categories. So an F10 might not be required. But again, I reiterate, it is a legal requirement that CDM regulations are strictly adhered to. Right, sorry, I've missed that. Yeah. Right. Moving on. Alcohol is proposed to be on sale for 12 hours a day. What provision will be made to ensure all members of the public are kept safe at all times, particularly that the site is very near to the river and the lake? I've heard that we're providing Harris fencing around, which I presume will fence off the lake. But people can drift outside those areas of Harris fencing, and the lake is very close also. Gunwade Lake, that is. However, regardless of all this information, given the licence is silent on the number of motor homes, tents and caravans to in the campsite. As Bob already said, a frequently asked question leaflet stated that up to 250 motorhomes, caravans and tents will be on the site. There's no layout of the pitches provided for or vehicular access roads, walkways, facilities, etc. It's just a line where the campsite area will be, not even a defined area. The site for the Rock Festival in Camperfield is previously used by horses, which may not have any adequate services to cater for this event. I'm not sure that there's any power supplies, water supplies. Even if there are power or water supplies down there, can they cope with the loading that will be put on them? I don't think there's anything anyway, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Particular concern is with hygiene and sanitation control. We've heard that luxury sanitation facilities are proposed, which must comply with the HSE Purple Guideline document. There is no plan indicating where these will be located, no details of where the water supply will come from and how they will be managed. Have any checks been carried out to see where the service connection will be made from? As I've said, I'm not sure that there's any supplies down there. Moving on to ecology, which nobody's talked about so far. Ecology is a very important thing. Nen Park Trust, or the Nen Park I should say, is a place where there's lots of good wildlife. Lots of good things have been over the years since the site was handed over to Nen Park Trust from Development Corporation, I understand. There is no mention in the licence as to how wildlife and biodiversity will be affected by and protected from this proposed event. Otters, being a protected species, have been visible recently in Gunwade Lake over several months, and that they're there, and lots of people have seen them, including myself. And this is an area that's in Gunwade Lake that is extremely close to where the music festival will take place. There is no mention of any ecological or environmental surveys assessments having been carried out. There may be other protected species there, like water voles, dormice, bats, I think it's barbastelle and pipistrelle are the protected ones. Greater crested newts could be there. Has any surveys been done? Have Natural England been contacted, or RSPB, or even the Environmental Agency? Again, amongst other things, the terms of the original lease state that there should be no detrimental effect to flora and fauna within the country park, and this should be, and the Nen Park Trust are responsible to making sure this doesn't happen. Sorry, people are talking, I'll just wait. Sorry, I thought you were... In conclusion, Ferry Meadows is not an appropriate venue for this event. You've heard of all other reasons which I'm not repeating. It's a rural area that's very quiet. It's a very important area for nature and conservation as well, the Nen Park Trust. It should be protected. This is not an appropriate event, and the committee should reject this application. As already said, there are more appropriate sites within Peterborough, such as the embankment, and if people have looked, the beer festival is on the week before, and this event could have piggybacked off the back of it and used the same facilities, I would have thought, which would be economies there, save money. We're talking about things costing money, and also be better for the environment. Like everybody else, I implore you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? No. In that case, could I invite Sue Cox to give your reasons for objecting to the application?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to make representation on behalf, follow on from Steve, for the River Nene otters. It would appear that I've not received any reassurance by Nene Valley Rock Festival that any consideration has been given to the Nene Valley, the River Nene otters. I'm sorry. Horse Meadow is well within the River Nene otter's habitat and territory, with clear evidence that they regularly fish and hunt in and around the meadow. They access Gunnald Lake along the Landy-Swallow Bridge Channel Culvert, and holding a music festival with the potential of 1,000 festival goers, as well as up to 250 caravans, campervans and tents on Horse Meadow, is a direct threat to a designated protected species as stipulated by gov.uk. And I would strongly appeal to the Chair not to allow this licence to be issued at that venue. Thank you. Ooh.
Thank you. Any questions on that from the committee? No? Thank you. Thank you. If the applicant would like to respond to any of the concerns raised by the objectors, but if I could ask that you please keep comments relevant to the 4 licensing objectives. We are aware that some issues have been raised which are or cannot be considered under the Licensing Act.
Okay, again, I might have to ask you to, for your guidance there. We were actually going to ask exactly the same question through yourself for the legal officer, because we felt that some of the things that had been brought up there were totally outside the scope of the licence application. The first thing I'd like to say is just a general comment, and I find it quite disappointing that some of the things that have been said are basically accusing us of lying or trying to bend the truth. We've been quite clear about the fact 4 days. We've been quite clear about the fact we have absolutely no intention of holding any other event other than a 4-day event. So to be, have people questioning that, I find quite disappointing, but there you go. Where do I start? Again, please, if I go off track here, just tell me. Peterborough Celebrates was mentioned. In conjunction with the parking issues. Our information is Peterborough Celebrates had 23,000 people at it. That's, I believe, what was reported in the press. We're talking about a maximum of 1,000. So again, there's a perspective issue here. Cherry Fields was mentioned. We've actually been and spoken to the residents of Cherry Fields. We've been and knocked on doors and spoken to people who live up there. As far as we can ascertain, they don't really seem to have a problem, or certainly the ones we spoke to didn't have a problem. This is Cherry Fields. I'm only talking about at the moment, specifically. Just moving on to the noise. Again, the figures that we've been provided were provided to us by Peterborough City Council. We can only work on the figures that we are supplied by the local authority. I'm struggling to see how individuals going out and doing their own readings have any relevance. I also pointed out in my speech earlier that we were told by the local authority that we had to employ an accredited qualified acoustics company, which is what we have done. We were not allowed to go out ourselves and take out, I've got a dB meter on my phone. I couldn't go out and submit those figures or anything else as evidence. So I would suggest that any evidence along those lines is not applicable. Regarding the Code of Practice, again, that is the document that we were told by Peterborough City Council that we were to use. We weren't given any other documents, so we have worked under the instructions of PCC. And it's worth noting, actually, that within the Code of Practice, it actually states that because we're a 4-day festival, we can only go at 15 dB above the ambient noise. Were we less than 4 days, the Code of Practice actually allows us to operate at 20 dB above the ambient noise level. So therefore, actually having a shorter period of time allows us to make more noise. There was a term used quite regularly, control measures. Why do we need so many control measures? We're very cognizant of the Purple Guide and the requirements of the Purple Guide, and also the requirements through other safety documentation. I don't understand why it's felt that we have gone over the top with these so-called control measures. We've just taken the standard requirements, health and safety requirements, and applied them to our festival. So, I mean, I can't comment any further on that. Again, I've already mentioned, we have no intention of having any more events, and it's worth, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's worth pointing out again that if this licence is granted, it is only granted to us. Nobody else can piggyback off that licence and use our licence. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And as I say, quite clearly, we are only going to have one 4-day festival, end of story. This year, that is, possibly something else in the future. With reference to the noise complaints number, again, I'm quite baffled by the comment that how can we handle all the complaints on one number? I'm struggling to see where all these complaints are coming from. If we are operating within the limits that we have been set, yes, we can take complaints, but realistically, we can then investigate them, but there is no requirement for us to then, apart from logging the fact there was a complaint and it's been investigated, this is what we found, there's no requirement to do anything more. So we will send someone out. Yes, yeah, that's what, when I said investigated, sorry, my colleagues, yeah, when I say investigated, I mean we will send somebody to look at this. But I would like to hope, yeah, the consultant will investigate, I'll get there eventually. I would like to hope that the residents will accept the findings, as we will have to, of this committee, and will not purposely try and, you know, just keep ringing us willy-nilly every 2 minutes, should the licence be allowed. Sorry, I'm just looking through my notes. Again, with reference to a typical rock band playing at 100 to 130 decibels, I take on board what the gentleman's saying, and maybe it was a bit of a flippant remark. I accept that. But what I'm trying to reinforce is that these people don't go round screaming and yelling, and you know, we're not of that age group. You can disagree if you like, but the guy who is running our, one of the acoustic consultants we've been talking with recently did the acoustic monitoring for an Arctic Monkeys concert at Wembley Stadium. Was it Wembley Stadium or the Wembley Arena? I'm not sure. One of the massive stadiums in London. That ran at the speakers at 105 decibels. Now, we're not having the Arctic Monkeys. We're not having a massive stadium like that. We are talking 89 dB at the sound desk. Yes, that's 15 metres away from the speakers, so the sound emanating from the speakers may be slightly, well, will be louder. But the way that these things are calculated, it works on the sound at the mixing desk, not the sound emanating from the speakers. I guess just to précis all of that, what I'm trying to say is that we have been given a set of conditions to work to. We have met those conditions. If the licence is granted, we intend, obviously, as I've already said, we can't afford to pay out fines. We intend to abide by those conditions. We don't want trouble. We don't want our festival shutting down halfway through because we've not adhered to the conditions. That wouldn't be good for us, that's for sure. Moving on to the last couple of areas then, the comments about the management of the festival. As far as we're aware, and of course we're again willing to be contradicted on this, a lot of what was mentioned in that speech is not relevant to the licence application. We, as I've already stated, have created in draft an event management plan and a risk assessment. Please could the chair through the legal officer advise me if those are actually required as part of the licence application, because we don't believe it is.
The regulatory officer, if you would like to answer that.
Of course. No, they are not. They are not on the licence. It's advised to go to the safety advisory group, which the Nene Valley Rock Festival have attended, and will be attending more prior to the concert if it happens.
Thank you.
Okay, so therefore, I mean, I'm not sure how to answer those. Again, moving on to the safety side, the proximity of Gunwade Lake, that may well be true. We will take every measure that we possibly can to prevent anybody leaving our festival area and going anywhere other than where they should. But realistically, at the end of the day, our responsibility has to end somewhere. You know, somebody could wander in from the other end and fall into, you know, into the lake. Again, I'm struggling to know how to really answer some of these things, because they seem kind of so out with the license application responsibilities. Again, the same as a campsite diagram. No, we haven't produced a campsite diagram as yet. When we know more how many people are going to need that campsite, then yes, we will provide a diagram. We will have to provide a diagram so our stewards know where to put the tents, where to put the motorhomes. We have stated, maybe I haven't stated here, but it is in our documentation, that we will obviously segregate the tents from the motorhome area. They won't be together. But apart from that, there's not much we can do 8 weeks out, not yet knowing how many people are going to be there. In relation to the power and water, again, I'm surprised that this has even come up. How can we run a festival with no power? Of course we've got power. We have generators. We are bringing generators in, which, by the way, before anyone shouts at me on that one, we are operating what are known as silent generators. Yes, they do make a slight noise, but obviously we don't want generators rumbling away over the top of the sound of the music. And water, we have been out, we've looked at the water facility, we've spoken with the associates here about the water facility, and we have plans in place, both through our event management plan to cover the water side, and also in the risk assessment of all the potential issues of a loss of water supply. Now, I don't know if I've actually covered everything there, because I was scribbling away as I was going through. Oh yes, I've been asked to mention that the toilets themselves are self-contained, so they recirculate and clean, and then they're just pumped out and then refilled with clean water or cleaning fluid. I don't know all the terminology each day. The final area then, the ecology. Am I allowed to ask my associates from Nene Park to comment on the ecology?
No, because it's not relevant to the licensing objectives.
Okay. That, in that case, is all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make one further comment on behalf of Nene Valley Rock Festival, please?
Yes, of course.
Yes, it's just to go back to the first set of comments with relating to the sound, the measured sound levels. I want to just reiterate a point that Tony made, that we have obviously worked within the guidance that has been provided, where we have worked with third-party acoustic specialists. the numbers that you have been presented as of a background noise of 36 dB is for being presented from somebody that, and unless I'm corrected here, is not professionally qualified. Even if we take the 36 dB number, if you add the 15 to that, that will give you 51 dB. And our noise modelling, which we have submitted and that has been provided by a professionally accredited individual, shows that the range in the noise will be between 45 and 49. So it is less than the background noise plus the 15 dB. And that point wasn't clearly articulated. And I think we ought to stress that point. The other point to mention also, we're related to the bass frequencies, and music is not what would be described as drum and bass, which does have a much louder or much greater emphasis on the lower frequencies. Of course, there is a bass line in the music that we play, but it's not at the same sort of level as would be associated with that sort of drum and bass music genre as well. So we don't see that as being such a great an issue. But again, within the 20 constraints that have been put upon us, there is particular mention there of dealing with certain frequency ranges, which we will of course adhere to as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In that case, can I thank everyone for their contributions, and I will now adjourn the meeting so the subcommittee can deliberate.